Good morning, guys. How are we all doing today? It's Wednesday, it's hump day. That means we're almost halfway through the week, and we've almost done our first full week of lockdown. So, how are you all feeling? How are you coping with it? I think it's a funny old one this time because I don't know about you guys, but for me, it seems like Monday to Friday, it's all very normal. The children are going to school, we're working, albeit we're at home. Lots of people are still going in to work. And then you come to the weekends, and then that's when it all seems to feel strange, because I don't know about you, but the week's hard, getting the children ready for school and working. And then normally you've got something fun or nice planned for the weekend, and we don't have that to look forward to at the moment. So the weekdays are feeling long to me, and then not much to look forward to at the weekends. Although, trying our best and trying to get out and do some walks and use the time productively, if possible, do some clearing out, sort out some bits that you haven't done, which all sounds a bit boring, but definitely makes you feel better once you've done it. But I just wanted to remind you all that it's hard times again at the minute. And if you're struggling, you're not alone, because I know a lot of friends and a lot of school mums and people that I speak to, lots of people are finding this tough at the minute, myself included. I'm struggling. I am having good days and bad days. And I think the time of year this time isn't helping. I think that the first lockdown was all a bit of a novelty, and sort of the whole world stopped, didn't it? The children didn't go to school. We were all thrown into our little bubbles at home, and it's just so different this time. And the dark early evenings and the cold weather, it just all feels a little bit more depressing. So I just wanted to remind you all, before we start our book today, that although the doors are closed of the yard on Gold Street, we are still open. We are still around if you'd like to talk to us. You can contact us on any of our social media platforms, or you can email us at shout@communitycourtyard.org, and we'll get back to you. It can be very lonely, these lockdown times, for people. Maybe, more so this time round, the time of year we're in. So we are still around. Luke and I are still your conversation starters, and we're very much still working. So please, if you are feeling low, or you just fancy someone to talk to, or you feel like you need some help with something, please contact us and we'll be in touch, because we are still here and we do understand how tough it is. And like I just said, I'm struggling some days. Some days I'm finding it hard to get going and do the things I need to do, because I'm feeling a little bit down. So together we will all get through this. We've done week 1. Week 2 starts tomorrow. And we're here if you need us, basically. Okay, so let's crack on with our reading today. So yesterday I started this book. You see? So Calm the F Down. And as I explained yesterday, it's by an author called Sarah Knight, who's written quite a few other books, actually. And it's a bit of a self-help book with a bit of humour thrown in. My lovely friend bought it for me to read, as she knows that I suffer with anxiety, and I'm one of those people that sits up at night worrying about things I can't control. And so it's just a bit of a read as to how to deal with things, and perhaps this might help some of you guys at home. So I'm going to continue from where we left off yesterday. The 4 Faces of Freaking Out. In my previous books, I've been known to offer a next taxonomy of the different types of readers who could benefit from taking my advice. I do this because I find that encountering a somewhat personalised profile helps one feel seen, which is comforting when one is about to be smacked upside the head with some decidedly uncomfortable truths. Which makes it unfortunate for you and me both that freaking out, how everybody does it and why, is all over the goddamn map. Some of us don't blink an eye when our septic tanks back up, but hyperventilate if Starbucks run out of almond croissants. Others pull a cool hand Luke when the car gets towed, or the test results come back positive, but reach our own personal DEFCON 1 when cable goes out during America's Next Top Model. Furthermore, freaking out manifests in different strokes for different folks. For some, it's the open-mouthed, panic-sweating countenance of a Kathy cartoon from the 80s. But for others, freaking out is more about tears than tremors, or black moods, or blank stares. And to top it all off, any one of us might experience a different form of freak out on a different day for a different reason. For example, you may not be a big dumb crybaby like your friend Ted, who spends all day posting feeling emotional emojis on Facebook. But if you lose your wedding ring or your grandma, you're liable to get a little weepy. And I don't typically waste my breath screaming and shouting. But one time in 2001, I opened the refrigerator door on my foot, and the resulting spittle-filled tirade was not unlike Jack Nicholson's turn on the stand in A Few Good Men. As I said, all over the map. So instead of trying to fit you as an individual freak-outer into one tidy category, I've winnowed the types of freakouts themselves into 4 big, messy categories, any one or more of which you might fall into at any given time. Anxiety, sadness, anger, avoidance, aka ostrich mode. These are the 4 faces of freaking out, the masks we wear when we worry obsessively. And, ooh, mama, it's getting hard to breathe up in this piece. Your job is to learn how to recognize them so you can fight back. Know your enemy and all that. Anxious. What it looks like. Anxiety comes in many forms, and for the uninitiated, it can sometimes be hard to label. For example, you may think you've got a touch of food poisoning when your upset stomach is actually due to anxiety. Or you might think you've been poisoned when really you're just having an old-fashioned panic attack. Been there, thought that. Other indicators include, but are not limited to, nervousness, headaches, hot flashes, shortness of breath, lightheadedness, insomnia, indecision, the runs, and compulsively checking your email to see if your editor has responded to those pages you sent an hour ago. And remember, you don't have to be diagnosed with capital A anxiety disorder to experience lowercase anxiety. Plenty of calm, rational, almost always anxiety-free people go through occasional bouts of situational anxiety. Why it's bad. Apart from the symptoms I listed above, one of the most toxic and insidious side effects of being anxious is overthinking. It's like that buzzy black housefly that keeps dipping and swooping in and out of your line of vision. And every time you think you've drawn a bead on it, it changes direction. Up in the corner, no, wait, over there by the stairs, uh-oh, too slow. Now it's hovering 3 feet above your head, vibrating like the physical manifestation of your brain about to explode. Where do you want to be, housefly? Make up your mind. Overthinking is the antithesis of productivity. I mean, have you ever seen a fly land anywhere for more than 3 seconds? How much could they possibly be getting accomplished in any given day? What can you do about it? You might need to Miyagi that stuff. Focus, one problem at a time, one part of this problem at a time, and most important, one solution to that problem at a time. Lucky for you, part 2 contains many practical tips for accomplishing just that. Keep reading is what I'm saying. Sad. What does it look like? Weeping, moping, rumpled clothes, running mascara, the scent of despair, and heaving, breathless heaving breaths. It can also lead to a condition I call social media self-pity, which is tiring not only for you, but also for your friends and followers. Cut it out, Ted. Nobody wants to watch you have an emotional breakdown in Garfield memes. Why is it bad? Listen, I've got absolutely nothing against a good cry. You're worried about your childhood. You're worried that your childhood home is going to be bulldozed by evil city planners, or that your hamster ping pong might not make it out of surgery. By all means, bawl it out. I do it all the time. Catharsis. Just try not to, wallow. When worrying becomes wallowing, letting sadness overtake you for long periods of time, you've got bigger problems. Ongoing sadness is exhausting. As energy flags, you might stop eating or leaving the house, which compounds the encroaching lethargy. You'll get less and less productive. And all of that can lead to feeling depressed and giving up on dealing with your stuff altogether. But to be clear, being sad, even for a messy, depressing stretch, is one thing. Having clinical depression is another. If you think you might not be merely sad, but fully in the grip of depression, I urge you to seek help beyond the pages of this book, written by a woman whose literal job is to come up with new ways to work the word F into a sentence. Though, if that woman may be so bold, depression, like anxiety, can be hard to suss out when you're the detective and your own head is the case. Do yourself a favour and listen to people around you when they say, hey, you seem not merely sad, but fully in the grip of depression. Maybe you should talk to a professional. And don't be ashamed about it. All kinds of people, even ones with objectively hunky-dory lives, can suffer from depression. Mental illness is a bitch. All of this is to say, I may not be qualified to diagnose or treat you for depression, the disease, but under the auspices of calm the F down, I think feeling depressed is fair game. And to my mind, that state is exhausted. What can you do about it? Patience, my pretties. We're going to get you up and out of bed sooner rather than later. It's what ping pong would have wanted. Angry. What does it look like? Painful encounters with fridge doors notwithstanding, I don't tend to get angry. Maybe it's because my parents didn't fight in front of me. Maybe it's just my natural temperament. Or maybe it's because I'm a stone cold bitch who skips getting mad and goes straight to getting even. But even though I don't do a lot of yelling, screaming, wishing poxes on people, or setting fire to their prized possessions myself, that doesn't mean that I don't know the drill. Those in the throes of anger experience unhealthy side effects, such as rising blood pressure and body temperature, the desire to inflict physical violence and the injuries sustained upon doing so, splotchy faces, clenched jaws, and unsightly bulging neck tendons. But an invisible, though no less damaging result of an angry freakout is that it impedes good judgment. It makes things worse. Why is it bad? In the age of smartphone cameras, every meltdown is a potential 15 minutes of infamy. Do you want to wind up on the evening news, spewing regrettable epithets on Facebook Live, destroying public property because you couldn't calm down? No, you do not. Behold, Mexican airport syndrome. Once upon a time, my husband and I were returning from a family vacation that had been organised by a travel agent. Somehow, when the 13 of us got to our connecting flight in Mexico City, I didn't have a ticket. Not a seat assignment, mind you, but a ticket. Who knows what had happened? But you know what doesn't fix it? Getting all up in the face of the airline employee manning the check-in desk. My sweet, generous, kind, typically very calm husband nearly learned this lesson the hard way when he lost his temper on one of said employees for about 3.2 seconds before I elbowed him in the ribs and communicated, "I don't want to get detained overnight or forever in Mexico City," with my eyes. Also saving his tonchita that day was the Long Island mum who was having the same problem and dealing with it in an exponentially worse way. Do you know that she has a very important bar mitzvah to attend tomorrow? Right? I got on the plane, she didn't. What can you do about it? Well, you could take an anger management class, but that doesn't sound very pleasant. I have a few stimulating alternatives I think you're going to like. Avoidance, aka ostrich mode. What it looks like. The tricky thing about ostrich mode is that you may not even realise you're doing it, because doing it is quite literally doing nothing. You're just ignoring or dismissing warnings and pretending like stuff isn't happening. Nothing to see here, folks. Head firmly in the sand. By the way, I know these giant birds do not really bury their disproportionately tiny heads in the sand to escape predators, but I need you to lighten up a little when it comes to the accuracy of my metaphors. Otherwise, this book will be no fun for either of us. Now, sometimes the ostrich stands alone. If you're merely putting off a mundane chore, that's pure, unadulterated avoidance. Other times, ostriching is the result of having already succumbed to anxiety, sadness, and anger. In those moments, it feels like your brain is a pot of boiling lobsters, and if you can just keep the lid tamped down tightly enough, maybe you'll never have to confront their silent screams. This is typically when I dive headfirst for the couch pillows. Why is it bad? First of all, undealt with stuff begays more stuff. Ignoring a jury summons can lead to fines, a bench warrant, a misdemeanor on your permanent record. Pretending like you haven't developed late life lactose intolerance can lead to an embarrassing dinner party fallout. And refusing to tend to that pesky wound you got while chopping your Christmas tree down may mean spending the new year learning to operate a prosthetic hand better than you operate an axe. And second, while I concede that willfully ignoring whatever stuff may be happening to you is a shrewd means of getting around having to acknowledge, accept, or address it, guess what? If your worries have sent you into ostrich mode, you haven't actually escaped them. They'll be sitting right outside your hidey hole the next time you lift your head. Avoidance means never ever solving your problem. What can you do about it? Great question. Just by asking, you're already making progress. Welcome to the flip side. Okay, I was saving the nitty-gritty practical stuff for part 2, but you've been so patient with all these parameters that I want to give you a sneak peek at how we're going to flip the script on whichever freak-out face you're experiencing. I've based my method on a little gem called Newton's third law of motion, which states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. You don't have to have taken high school physics, which I didn't, as may be obvious from my forthcoming interpretation of this law, to understand the idea that you can counteract a bad thing with a good thing. Laughing is the opposite of crying. Deep breaths are the opposite of lung emptying screams. The pendulum swings both ways, etc., etc. Ergo, one simple route to calming down pre, mid, or post freak out is to cue, Gloria Estefan, turn the beat around. So, anxious and overthinking. Focus. Which of these worries takes priority? Which can you actually control? Zero in on these and set the others aside. sad and exhausted. Repair with self-care. Treat yourself the way you would treat a sad friend in need. Be kind, naps, chocolate, baths, cocktails, a South Park marathon, whatever relieves your funk or puts a spring back in your step and a giggle in your wiggle. Angry and making stuff worse. Peace out with perspective. You can't elbow yourself in the ribs like I did to my husband in the Mexico City airport. Seriously, elbows don't bend in that direction. But when you're getting hot under the collar, you can imagine what it would be like to live out your days in a south of the border airport holding pen. Visualize the consequences and adjust your attitude accordingly. Avoiding and prolonging the agony. Act up. Take one step, no matter how small, toward acknowledging your problem. Say it out loud. Write it in steam on the bathroom mirror. Fashion its likeness into a voodoo doll. If you can do that, you're on your way to calming down. So there you have it, a simple framework for acknowledging your worries, recognizing your unhealthy reactions, and beginning to reverse them. I mean, I didn't become an internationally best-selling anti-guru by making this stuff hard for you guys. Freak out funds. In the life-changing magic of not giving an F, I introduced the concept of F-bucks, which are the resources, time, energy, and money that you spend on everything you care about, from activities and appointments to friends, family, and more. Conversely, you can choose not to spend these resources on the things you don't care about. Managing them is called making a budget, a concept that is on track to become my most enduring legacy. A lemonade for anti-gurus, if you will. Since you don't fix what ain't broke, I carried F-bucks and the budgeting thereof through the next book, Get Your Stuff Together. The premise being that you also have to spend time and energy on money on things you must do, even if you don't really want to do them. Like, say, going to work so you can earn money so you can pay your rent. In the epilogue, I warned that stuff happens, and you might want to reserve a little time, energy, and money for that scenario just in case. Thus, in Calm the F Down, because I am nothing if not a maker-upper of catchy names for common sense concept that we should all be employing, even if we didn't have catchy names for them, I give you freak out funds, FFs. These are bucks you access when stuff happens. You could spend them exacerbating all the delightful behaviour I went over in the previous section, or you could spend them calming down and dealing with the stuff that has caused said freak out. Ideally, you've read Get Your Stuff Together and saved up for this scenario. If not, you're in even more need of the following tutorial. But any way you slice it, their quantities are limited and every freak out fund spent is time, energy, or money deducted from your day. Time has been infinite supply since the beginning. They're not making any more of it, which means that eventually you're going to run out of time to spend doing everything, including freaking out about or dealing with whatever it is about to happen. Why waste it on the former when spending it on the latter would vastly improve the quality of your entire remaining supply of minutes? Energy. You will also eventually run out of energy because although Jeff Bezos is trying really hard, he has not yet programmed Alexa to suck out your mortal soul while you're sleeping and recharge you on Wi-Fi. At some point, you have to eat, rest, and renew the old-fashioned way. And if that stuff does hit the fan, you'll wish you'd spent less energy freaking out about it and had more left in the tank to devote to dealing with it. Money. This one's more complex since some people have a lot and some people have none. And everyone's ability to replenish their coffee varies. But if you're broke, then stress shopping while you freak out about passing the bar exam is obviously poor form. Whereas if you've got a bottomless bank account, you might argue that cleaning out the J. Crew clearance rack is at least contributing to the improvement of your overall mood. I'm not one to poo-poo anyone's version of self-care, but all that money you spent on khaki shorts and wicker belts is definitely not solving the underlying problem of your LSAT scores. Hiring a tutor would probably be better use of funds. And to all my billionaire doomsday preppers out there with money to burn, you do you. But I have a hunch neither your guns nor your Bitcoin will be worth anything on the zombie exchange. In sum, worrying is wasteful. It costs you time, energy, and/or money, and gives you nothing useful in return. Whereas if you spend your freak out funds actually dealing with something, you've, actually dealt with it. My goal is to help you minimize your worrying and spend your freak out funds wisely along the way. Nice try, Knight. If I could stop worrying and retain a vice-like grip over my time, energy, and money, I'd be Jeff Bezos by now. Hey, calm down. I said minimize. I personally hold the woman's world record for worrying every day about dying of cancer. Nobody's perfect. But when you find yourself worrying to the point of freaking out, you should consider the resources you're wasting on that futile pursuit. Anxious, overthinking is overspending. Sad. After you've spent all that energy crying, wailing, beating your chest, and feeding the depressive beast, you've got nothing left with which to deal. Angry. This might be the biggest misuse of freak out funds, since it usually adds to your debt. Like when get so mad at the amount of time you've spent on hold with the Home Depot customer service that you throw your iPhone at the wall, crack the screen, dent the sheetrock, and drop the call, which means you haven't solved your original problem, faulty bird bath, and you've added 2 new line items to your real and metaphorical bills. Ostriching. Don't think you guys are getting away with anything. Even by avoiding your stuff, you're depleting your freak out funds. You've wasted a lot of valuable time, a non-renewable resource that could have been put towards solutions, doing a whole lot of nothing. You've also wasted energy contorting yourself into pretending everything is just fine. Remember that cartoon dog? He's a pile of cartoon embers now. No matter which type of freak out you're experiencing or trying to avoid, there are wiser ways to deploy your funds. For example, instead of wasting time worrying about failing your physics class, you could spend it mocking up some quantum flashcards. Instead of wasting energy pacing around the apartment, worrying about what's going to happen when your roommate gets home and sees that dog Meatball has had his way with someone's favourite Air Jordans, you could spend that energy researching obedience schools for Meatball. And instead of spending money on quacky products that will supposedly prevent you from going bald but don't actually work, you could have bought yourself a few really cool hats and become a really cool hat guy. Welcome to the flip side, stranger. Fancy meeting you here. In other news, I'm pretty sure at least 3 readers and 1 dog have already gotten their money's worth out of this book. The 4th fund. Curtis 50 Cent Jackson had the 50th law. I have the 4th fund, an offshoot of books that I developed exclusively for Calm the F Down. This is hot original content right here, folks. We all have that friend or family member or co-worker or fellow volunteer at the food co-op who seems to be in constant crisis mode, don't we? I'll call her Sherry. There isn't a day that hasn't stood Sherry up, an asshole that hasn't rear-ended her in the parking lot, a deadline that hasn't been completely blown by one of her clients, or a bucket of compost that hasn't been appended on her lap by a careless stoner wearing those god-awful Tom's shoes that make your feet look mummified remains. You want to be sympathetic when Sherry kvetches about her latest catastrophe or shows up to the morning meeting all sweaty and blinking rapidly and going on and on about, would you believe the stuff I have to deal with? But the thing is, she does this all the time. So you also kind of want to be like, what's your problem now, you freak show? Just calm down and deal with it. Jesus. If you can't relate to this sentiment at all, you're a better person than I am. Enjoy your priority seating in the afterlife. This brings us to the fourth fund, goodwill. Unlike time, energy, and money, the goodwill account is not held by you. It is funded by the sympathy and/or assistance of others and is theirs to dole out or withhold as they see fit. Your job is to keep your account in good standing by not being a freak show all the time like Sherry. What Sherry doesn't realise is how much sympathy she erodes when she brings her constant crisis to your front door. At some point, you'll start shutting it in her face, like you do with those little kids looking for their ball. What? They shouldn't have kicked it in my yard. It's my ball now. Anyway, now let's turn the tables and say you're the one looking for sympathy from your fellow man. That's cool. It's human nature to commiserate. Like making conversation about the weather, we all do it. We bitch, we moan, we casually remark on how warm it's gotten lately, as though we don't know a 90-degree summer in Ireland foretells the death of our planet. When you're feeling overcome by the sheer magnitude of your personal misfortune, it's understandable to cast about for and feel buoyed by the sympathy of others. Sometimes you just want a friend to agree with you that you shouldn't have had to wait around for 45 minutes for the cable guy to show up, and then realise he didn't have the part needed to connect your box, causing you to get so mad that you broke a tooth chomping down in frustration on the complimentary pen he left behind. What good is a pen going to do when all you want to do is to be able to watch Bravo, and now you have to go to the dentist, which is undoubtedly going to ruin another entire day? Or maybe you just need to let anyone know that Jeremy, the assistant marketing VP, is the absolute goddamn worst. I hear ya, so does everybody in a 50-foot radius. You might want to tone it down just a touch. And when your friends, family, and fellow volunteers see you in distress, their first reaction will probably be to sympathise with you. They wouldn't be working at a food co-op if they weren't bleeding heart socialists. This is where the fourth fund comes into play. If you freak out all the time about everything, you're spending heavily against your account of goodwill. You're in danger of overdrawing it faster than they drain the aquarium after a kid falls into the shark tank, resulting in the classic boy who cried shark conundrum. When you need the help and sympathy for something worthy, it may no longer be there. If you'll indulge me in a brief tangent, I have some real talk from my fellow anxiety with a capital A sufferers who find themselves in constant crisis mode more often than not. Due to my then undiagnosed generalized anxiety disorder, I spent years treating my friends, family, colleagues, and husband to all of my mysterious stomach aches and last-minute cancellations and office crying and whirling dervish-like propensity for reorganizing other people's homes without permission. Most of them couldn't understand why I was freaking out at all. To them, the majority of my worries didn't seem worthy of such chaos and insanity. What's your problem now, you freak show? Just calm down and deal with it. Jesus. Sound familiar? Some of these peeps began to withdraw, withholding their sympathy and support, and they weren't always able to hide their annoyance or frustration with me either. At the time, I was confused, a little bit hurt. righteously indignant even. But today, with the benefit of both hindsight and therapeutic intervention, you know what? I don't blame them. It's not the rest of the world's job to deal with my stuff. Harsh, maybe, but I get paid to tell it like it is. As I've said, I know exactly how badly anxiety, the mental illness, can mess with us. And it's awesome when our family and friends can learn about it and help us through it. I'm eternally grateful to my husband for putting up with a few years of extreme unpleasantness before beginning to understand and accept my anxiety. It's still unpleasant sometimes, but at least he knows that at least he knows that now I know what the underlying problem is and that I'm trying to keep it in check, which deposits a lot more goodwill into my account than when I spent most of my time sleeping and crying and not doing anything to change the situation. So if I may make a potentially controversial argument, some of us get dealt worse hands than others and deserve a little overdraft protection. But the Bank of Goodwill shouldn't extend lifetime credit just because you have some issues to work through. If not, a day goes by when you don't dong your anxious freak out face and consequently get all up in other people's faces with your problems, then it may be time to consider that you are part of your problem. Am I a monster? I don't think so. A blunt-ass bitch maybe, but you already knew that. And this blunt-ass bitch thinks that we are actually clinically anxious people need to take some personal responsibility. We need to acknowledge our tendencies to do some soul searching and maybe go to a doctor or therapist or Reiki healer or something and sort out our stuff, lest we risk alienating our entire support system. To put it another way, if you had chronic diarrhea, you'd be looking into ways to stop having chronic diarrhea, right? And what if it was affecting your relationship because you couldn't go to parties, or you were always cancelling dates at the last minute, or when you were at other people's houses, you were so distracted by your own stuff that you weren't being very good company anyway? You wouldn't want to continue pooping all over your friends figuratively, would you? I thought so. Moving on. Mental decluttering and the one question to rule them all. We're getting down to the last of the brass tacks here in part one. We've gone over the importance of naming your problems, understanding your reaction to those problems, and valuing your response. It's time to segue into how exactly you're supposed to put all of those lessons into action and begin calming down. Enter mental decluttering. If you read any of the NFGGs or watched my TEDx talk, you're familiar with the concept. I'll try to explain it succinctly enough to first timers that it won't send the rest of you flocking to Amazon to complain that night repeats herself. Here's how it works. Just like the physical decluttering made popular in recent years by Japanese tidying expert and author of the life-changing Magic of Tidying Up, Marie Kondo, mental decluttering, made popular by the anti-guru, sometime parodist and author of the life-changing Magic, Sarah Knight, has 2 steps: discarding and organising. The difference is my version of discarding and organising happens entirely in your mind, not in your drawers or closets or garage. There is no physical exertion involved. You won't catch me chanting or downward dogging my way through this. You're free to engage in those activities if you wish, whether it's to calm down or just to pick up nice single mums named Beth at the YMCA, but it's not required. Will mental decluttering eventually leave you physically refreshed? It sure will. After all, fewer panic attacks and rage-gasms are good for your heart, your lungs, and the tiny bones in your feet that tend to break when you kick things that are not meant to be kicked. But that's not the primary focus. The 2 steps of mental decluttering align not all coincidentally with the 2 steps of the no worries method. Step 1, discard your worries. Step 2, organise your response to what's left. That's it. Discard, then organise. And the way you begin is by looking at whatever problem you're worried about and asking yourself a very simple question. Can I control it? This inquiry informs every shred of advice I'll be giving for the remainder of the book. Just like Marie Kondo asked you to decide if a material possession brings you joy before you discard it, or like I ask you to decide if something annoys you before you stop giving a damn about it, asking, can I control it, is the standard by which you'll measure whether something is worth your worries and what, if anything, you can do about it. Mental decluttering and the one question to rule them all really shine in part 2. But before we get there, I have one last parameter I want to parametate, which is this. When what ifs become worries and worries become freakouts, and freakouts make everything harder and more miserable than it ever had to be, one of the things you can control right away is your emotional response. With that, I'll turn it over to man's best friend, who is also sometimes man's worst enemy. This is your brain on puppies. Emotions are like puppies. Sometimes they're purely fun and diverting. Sometimes they're comforting or distracting. Sometimes they just peed on your mother-in-law's carpet and aren't allowed in the house anymore. In any case, puppies are good for short periods of time until you have to get something accomplished. And then you need to coax them into a nice, comfy crate because you cannot, I repeat, cannot deal with your stuff whilst those little puppies are on the loose. It doesn't even matter if these are bad puppies or good puppies. All puppies or emotions are distracting. It's in their nature. You can get totally derailed by positive emotions. Like if you're so excited that the Oreo McFlurry is back, you go straight to the drive-thru, having forgotten it was your turn to pick up your kid at preschool. Whoops. Excited to make digestive love to diabetes in a cup aren't the emotions to calming down. What we're trying to do is take the freak out, inducing puppies or emotions, and grant them a reasonable visitation period in which to healthily acknowledge their existence. Give them a chance to wear themselves out with a short burst of activity, and then exile them while we get to work on solving the problems that brought them out to play in the first place. All right, just to be sure we're all on the same emotionally healthy page, let me be super duper clear. It's okay to have emotions. Or as another guru put it, you've got emotions and you've got emotions and you've got emotions. Having them is not the problem. It's when you let emotions run rampant at the expense of taking action that you start having problems. In fact, there's lots of science that says you must allow yourself to feel the feels about the bad stuff, that you have to go through it to get past it. This is especially true when it comes to trauma, and I'm not advising you to ignore those problems or emotions. Just to sequester them periodically like you would an unruly puppy. It's even okay to freak out a little bit, to yell and scream and ostrich every once in a while. We're not aiming for vacant-eyed, emotionless husk. That's some prelude to going on a killing spree right there and not an outcome I wish to promote to any of my readers. That said, and in my decidedly non-scientific opinion, when your MPs are running amok, it's time to lock them up and at least temporarily misplace the key. What I will henceforth refer to as emotional puppy crating has been useful to me in the following scenarios. It's how I continue to enjoy my wedding reception after the train of my dress caught on fire. Instead of going on a champagne rampage against the culprit, love you, Mum. It's how I managed to write and deliver a eulogy for my uncle's funeral instead of becoming incapacitated by grief. It's how we decided to call an emergency plumbing hotline at 2 a.m. when the upstairs neighbour's toilet went Niagara Falls into our bathroom, instead of succumbing to despair and sleep and making everything that much worse and wet for ourselves the next day. First, I acknowledge the emotion, be it anxiety, anger, sadness, or one of their very many tributaries, e.g. fear. And then I sort of mentally pick it up by the scruff of the neck and quarantine it in a different part of my brain than the part I need to use to deal with the problem at hand. If you practice mindfulness, you might know this trick as Teflon mind, so termed because negative thoughts aren't allowed to stick. I think the puppy analogy is more inviting than the image of an 8-inch frying pan anywhere near my skull. Am I successful every time? Of course not. In addition to not being a doctor, I'm also not an all-powerful goddess or a liar. Emotional puppy crating isn't always feasible. Even when it is, it takes practice and concerted effort. Much like herding a 20-pound package of muscle and saliva into a 5x5 cage, if you don't fasten the lock firmly enough, your puppies could escape for a potentially destructive, exhausting scamper around your mental living room, scratching mental floors, chewing mental furniture, and further distracting you from calming down and dealing with your stuff. That's okay. You can always wrestle or gently lead or even trick them back in. All tactics that I'll explain and explore in part 2. Like I said, practice, but it's worth it. And don't forget, in the same way that you can lock those rascals up, you can also let them back out whenever you want, whenever you must. Whenever their precious puppy faces will make you feel better, not worse. It's not like you've sent your emotions to live with an elderly couple on a nice farm upstate. They're just chilling in their crate until such time as they are once again invited to roam freely. When that time comes, go ahead, open the door. Let them romp around and entertain you for a spell. Distract you from your woes. Nuzzle your face, lick your toes, whatever. I don't even have a dog, I'm just going on here. But oh hey, once you've had your emotional puppy time, back in the crate they go. Now go be a good boy and let's calm down. Right guys, that's where I'm going to finish today. We're moving on to part 2 tomorrow. Oh, I really enjoyed that. Some of the things in there was really making me smile, and I think, like I said yesterday, a few of those things I can really resonate with me. So I hope you enjoyed it too. Hope you all have a great day. Don't forget, it's Remembrance Day today, so 11 o'clock we'll be doing a 2-minute silence. So I hope you can all do that wherever you are at home, to remember all the people that we were lost. And have a great day. Remember, we're here if you need us, and hopefully we'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye.